Well, guys, after 3 episodes, it seems we're starting to venture away from Molly's death and getting into other things that don't really matter, but the show seems to think does matter. Hey guys, Kevin for Guilt, Season 1, Episode 4, Blood Ties. And I was really looking forward to this episode. I've really been liking what the show has been doing so far. And, I've been really interested in the case and whatnot and everything that's been brought up. And this episode, a good chunk of it did focus on the case, but I didn't feel like this episode was really focused on the case. And to be completely honest with you guys, wasn't really into this episode, and this show honestly might be starting to lose me because if it's going where I think it's going after this episode, I'm not gonna care. I'm really not, because here's the thing for me. This show is a good, I think, 13 episode series where you can do it in the summer and just do it for 13 episodes and then be done with it. That's fine. This episode, to me, makes it seem like they're trying to expand the show for a season 2, and I really hope they're not doing that. I really want this to be 13 episodes. They already said that they might stop, and this show doesn't have much of a following, really. I mean, I think I'm one of the only people that review this show. In fact, you guys know my reviews, they don't have a lot of views or whatever. The only reason I'm watching the show is because it's been really good so far. This episode, though, is very slowly starting to lose me. I really was not into this episode that much. I think there were a lot of things here that I thought was really stupid and just really dumb. There was a lot of downtime in this episode, and Guild is one of those shows where I've said before, it's not great TV. It's not. It's really silly at times, but it can be a lot of fun, and when there's a lot going on, it can be really, really good, and you have really good actors and actresses, especially Daisy Head, Emily Tremaine doing a terrific job, and this episode, a lot of the problems I'm having with Guilt are all in this episode. A lot of it is in here. But let's just get into this episode because there were a lot of things I really did not like. We start this episode, right away things are off. We see Natalie and Grace just casually jogging for like a minute. And I don't know why we saw this. There's like some guy that's following them. They seem to think that they have a stalker. We don't know who this man is, but clearly someone is following them. And we have heard of this before, that someone definitely is following them. But they clearly have a stalker, and we don't know really who that is. But right in the beginning of this episode, we see Grace is now no part of the public eye. No one's really targeting her, and it makes sense because Prince Theo now has this royal wedding coming up, and they focus way too much on Prince Theo in this episode. I definitely will say that. There were some good scenes in this episode. I definitely will say there were some really good scenes here. But we see that Grace really isn't much of a target anymore, and to me, I don't know why. I get that, like I said, it's 13 episodes, but this felt way too quick. The fact that Grace could go from, like, the FBI's most wanted to just not even talked about is kind of silly. I don't like how she's no longer a suspect. I'd like some people to still think she is, and luckily, someone thinks she is, and that someone is Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn really suspects Grace, but Gwendolyn's kind of a bitch as well, honestly. Gwendolyn's really bitchy in this episode and quite annoying, and basically, the fact that she can just go on jogs, it is kind of a cool scene to go with them, have them go on jogs and no one following them. There's no cameras or anything. So I think it's kind of cool, and I like the Prince Theo's wedding as a distraction. It just, this whole thing didn't exactly work for me. I just thought it was kind of a quick transition and really just a weird way to start the episode. But it really does show how off things are in this episode and how unfocused I think this episode kind of was. And right away, we get this really random thing where we see Natalie is screwed up big time, mistaking the police for the paparazzi, she realizes. She thinks it's the paparazzi, and it turns out that it's actually the police, and she's now under arrest for assaulting a police officer. I thought this was stupid. I really thought this was dumb. Just a way to create drama, just a way to have Natalie have bigger problems, and just a way to, the thing is, there's no reason to do this for Natalie. Why? Because we can't make her a suspect. Natalie was the only one that was not around when Molly was murdered. So there is literally no way you can make Natalie a suspect, and it seems like, okay, we can't have Natalie be a suspect, so we're going to give her something else to do, and the majority of stuff they do with her in this episode, I really liked her character, but I don't like what they're doing with her. The direction they're going, I'm not really a fan of, and we see them, Bruno is tampering with the Molly Ryan evidence, and you're really wondering why he's doing this, definitely. We get this really weird scene with him and Gwendolyn, where she's literally trying to seduce him while he's looking at evidence and trying to take his mind off it. It was very weird the way that was done. It's weird. I don't like these two having sex. I just find it very strange, and I'd like it a lot more if this was like American Crime Story, where you can tell they have feelings for each other, but they don't really go anywhere with it because it's not really gonna work. That I would like. I don't want these two to be in a relationship. I honestly don't want that. I think it's just really silly and it's just dumb, and a lot of what Gwendolyn does in this episode is a big problem with this episode for me. So Stan then strolls in to save the day for Natalie. Right away, he saves the day for her, and he even threatened to use the Beatrice Lindley fiasco against Gwendolyn and her team, and stops them from, doing anything bad to Natalie, because obviously he doesn't want this to end bad for Natalie, so he bails her out, and Luke, we find, has this big art show coming up, and it's really stressing him out, and he doesn't think it's really going to go well, and this is most of what we focus on, is Luke in this art show, which I just didn't really care about. I mean, the show is supposed to be about solving this case, and it's like, what are we doing here? Why are we focusing on an art show? I don't know. The show's venturing into something else, and Grayson gives this really big pep talk, but also insists that he kicks his drug addiction once and for all, and I don't care. I don't care that Luke is on drugs. Now, I get that the show is kind of showing that, okay, maybe he could have been on drugs when he killed Molly, but there's not really much evidence that tells me that he kills Molly. Mainly because I don't think we've seen enough of Luke. I think all we've seen of Luke is him brooding over something, or him being really upset, or him complaining about something, and having Grace right by his side. That's all we've seen of Luke. We haven't seen anything else, and they're definitely not using Luke as much as they should. I do think the one character they use way too much in this episode is Bruno. They do way too much with him in this episode, and I said before that I didn't want him to be just a stereotypical police officer. I don't want him to be the Bruno we get in this episode either, though. Because this episode, we find out that Bruno is a dirty cop, and not only has he tampered with Molly's evidence, but he's done this many times in the past, and I did not think this was the direction to go with him. I'd like it a lot more if he just had a troubled past, not just tampering with evidence. Why does every cop on these shows like Guilt, need to be a dirty cop? I don't understand. Why does he have to be a dirty cop? Why does he have to tamper with evidence? There's really no reason as to why he's doing this. He's not the one that's there to protect Grace and Natalie. He's just a guy trying to close the case, and I don't really know why we had to go in this direction with him tampering with evidence. It just kind of killed the mood for me. And definitely, the one thing that, I'll tell you right off the bat, the thing that, kind of turned me off in this episode immediately was the whole Gwendolyn Bruno thing. But the fact that we focused on Bruno so much throughout this episode, I think we were way too focused on him. And we see our favorite police tag team are on the case. They're following up on a potential lead of Molly's stalker, and basically they're trying to figure out, what's going on there. And Natalie and Bruno, we see there's a lot of flirting between them in this episode. They're flirting over like a pint and chips, and just a really weird scene. I am not really a fan of them flirting at all. I don't really like it, and we get this really cheesy scene of Gwendolyn seeing this all go down, and I swear, if we're going into love triangle territory here, where Gwendolyn is jealous of Natalie and Bruno, I'm done, because it's stupid. It honestly is stupid. I don't give a fuck who Bruno's with. It has nothing to do with the case here, and again, they want this to be a 13-episode series, and if we're gonna focus on this love triangle, it's really gonna stall out the case, and I'd rather watch them solve the case than have this whole thing go on, which is just prolonging things, and it's stupid, and I don't really care. Why does Gwendolyn... First of all, they're not even really that exclusive. Bruno literally turned down sex from her, so I understand, yes, she's a little bit pissed, but they're not really mutually exclusive. To me, they seem like friends with benefits, so I don't know why she's so jealous. I think it's stupid of what's going on here between Bruno and Natalie. I just don't really care that these two are together, and I don't really care that she's jealous, and especially, this episode kind of hints that the main reason she might be targeting Grace is because she might be jealous of Natalie. It's really stupid if that's why this is going on, because that's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. It's really unrealistic, and I really hope that's not what the show's trying to say. Prince Theo then gives this whole speech or whatever. I don't really know what it's about. It's about his wedding or something like that that's going on. I don't really care. I still am trying to figure out why we're using this character so much, why he matters. I still can't give a shit about his character. I'm sorry, even though the show wants me to. I just don't care about what's going on with him. There's really nothing they can do, to get me to care about his character much. However, he's really getting agitated that Bruno may now reveal his secret affair with Molly, and at the time, I thought this was compelling. Now I just don't really think it's that interesting. I mean, his whole affair with Molly, I mean, I don't think that Prince Theo's the one that killed Molly. I just don't think it's him. I think it'd be way too predictable if it is, and the whole thing that's going on with him, him getting pissed at Pike and everything about what's going on, I just don't really care. And the main reason is because Bruno's involved with all this. I just don't want Bruno to be this corrupted cop. I'd honestly rather him just be a plain cop that solves things. I'd rather him be that, because I think that'd be a much more better character than what we're getting at here. I'm not really a huge fan of this. And then, for whatever reason, Natalie starts to investigate Gwendolyn. I don't know why, but she's investigating Gwendolyn, because she thinks that there's something that Gwendolyn is hiding, and she thinks that the main reason she might be targeting Grace is because she could be the killer, possibly. Now, do I think that Gwendolyn is the killer? Fuck no. There's absolutely no evidence that says she's the killer, but Natalie goes online to research her. It looks like a Letterboxd page when she looks at her, I'm not gonna lie. Like, if you guys go on Letterboxd, the site where I write movie reviews, that's what this looked like to me. It looked like a Letterboxd page, and it was interesting the way that was done, but it hints that maybe Gwendolyn is something to hide. I don't really know why we're going in this direction. Why would Gwendolyn just randomly hide things? I don't like that at all. I think it's really stupid if that's the direction they're going in. But we see Theo has sent a warning message setting internal affairs on Bruno to make sure that he stays under his thumb, and the threat definitely worked, as next thing we know, Bruno is stealing blood from Molly's corpse. Again, really weird, the direction we're going with him. Why is he all of a sudden corrupted? It just seems as it's come out of nowhere. I mean, we went from Bruno just wanting to close this case to stealing blood from Molly's corpse. I mean, there's a big difference between those two things, and I'm not a huge fan of it. Patrick got really close to learning about the necklace from Kaylee before Roz gets bouncers to intervene, basically, on what's going on there. He wants to find out, why she has a necklace and everything. And what was the one thing that Gwendolyn told Patrick? You need to stay calm by this. You need to not be calm, and you need to stay calm. You need to keep the FBI off your radar. And it seems like that's not what Patrick's doing. In fact, he's doing more intensive research than ever, and I don't care about Gwendolyn after this episode, honestly. If you guys can't tell, I don't really care where they're going with Gwendolyn. I don't really think, I'm just not really a huge fan where Gwendolyn's going, so I just don't really like where they're going with that. Gwendolyn then has this really traumatic time. We find out that Gwendolyn had a really tragic time coming out of high school with an innocent classmate, got beaten to death, and to make things worse, the murderers actually got away with that too. So that could be the reason why she's going after Grace. Now, this I think is a little bit interesting. The fact that she had this time out of high school, I think, is definitely interesting. I just don't really understand what the point of it was, really, just to sympathize with Gwendolyn, because it seems like the show wants us to feel bad, but then it seems like the show's trying to portray her as a bitch. So I don't really know what the show's trying to do. It just didn't really do much for me. So Natalie naturally tries to use this advantage and agrees upon getting Grace in for questioning, basically, to see if maybe Grace could be the one that did it. And Kaylee then gives in to Patrick, tells him about how the necklace is from working at the sex club and what's going on there, and how Patrick thinks that Grace could be the one that killed Molly and everything. Just interesting scene, the way that I like the actress that plays Kaylee, I definitely say it. She gave a very good performance there. I really like what she did. The police then found Grace's blood and skin cells under Molly's fingernails. So this is very interesting, the fact that we saw that. The fact that there's blood, Grace's blood under her fingernails and everything. That's honestly very suspicious. And Grace claims that it's just a belly button piercing and not from a brutal murder of what's going on there. Again, really weird. I don't like, I don't really like where they're going with that either. I think it's kind of dumb. I just think this whole thing, the evidence here, it's just about a belly button piercing. Like, literally, it's about scars on a belly button. This is where we are. It seems really silly to me. And after getting suspicious of Bruno for flirting with Natalie, Gwen literally kicks him off the case only because he was flirting with Natalie. Like, she's just a bitch. I'm sorry, Gwendolyn is a bitch, and you really do see that here. What a bitch. Literally, all he did was flirt with Natalie for a little bit, and then she kicks him off the case, and I don't care. I don't give a fuck about what's going on here, if you guys can't tell, and this just made me not care even less. The fact that, again, they just said this whole thing where they're trying to sympathize with Gwendolyn, and now all of a sudden, she kicked him off the case. I don't care. I literally do not care. So, we then go to Luke's art show. He made this like surprise for Grace at his art show. It's a nice picture of her, it's a self-portrait, but again, it's just a self-portrait. It's really not anything that's big of a deal. It's just a self-portrait, and the show made it seem like it was this amazing thing, and Bruno, of course, now he's no longer on the case. He has no time, he wastes no time in having sex with Natalie. Right then and there, they have sex, and I don't care. I don't know why we went in this direction randomly. Now, did I kind of think that maybe these two would get together? Oh, yeah, I definitely kind of saw Bruno and Natalie getting together a lot more than I saw Bruno and Gwendolyn. The reason I don't like this is because all it's doing is setting up this really unnecessary love triangle for Bruno, Natalie, and Gwendolyn, and I don't care. Mainly because I don't care about Gwendolyn. I just don't care about her. The show has really made me not like this character, and especially after this episode, I just find her to be really bitchy and really whiny. Most of her character in this episode is just her First of all, so far her character has been either whining about Grace or whining about Natalie. There is no progression in her character. There's nothing interesting about her except that she's the one that whines, and she's the one. Every show is that character, every show, it kind of has that character that you just don't like, and this is that character that I don't like. I don't like Gwendolyn. I think she's annoying, and I'm just not really a fan of her, I have to say. So at the very end of this episode, we get this really unnecessary thing where Luke gives drugs to this guy, and then he's arrested for selling drugs. I don't know where the show is going, but that's how this episode ends. Like I said, very unfocused. Let's get into how messy this was. So overall, guys, I didn't hate this episode. I was just a little bit disappointed because here's the thing. Yes, the whole Gwendolyn Bruno stuff has been going on throughout the last 3 episodes, but it was very much to the side. They only showed a couple times of them just having sex or post-coital or something like that. They never really went that deep into it. And now that it's like the sole focus of this episode and most of the episode was focused on just that, that's what really pissed me off here. I don't care about Gwendolyn. I don't care about what's going on here. And if this is the direction the show is heading, then we're heading to this love triangle, and we're not going to focus as much on Molly's case because most of the stuff in Molly's case was all just because of Gwendolyn and her being upset. I'm pretty sure that she did this because she was upset about Natalie and Bruno, and she wanted to target Grace because of that. The reveal we got about Gwendolyn still doesn't really do much with her character. Okay, someone was assaulted. Okay, she was really affected by it. Great. What else can we do with her? I don't really know. I mean, there's really not much we know about her. The fact that Bruno is a corrupt cop, it's an interesting plot development. I just don't really know if we need to do this with him. To me, Bruno just didn't seem like, he seemed like a good cop. He didn't seem like someone that's corrupted. I don't know why he has to be this corrupted cop. I just don't, it's not really working in the way the show wants it to. Him and Natalie getting together, I could care less. I really could care less at this point. I don't give a fuck what's going on there. You know who didn't have much to do here was Stan. Stan really did not have much to do in this episode, aside from that one scene and helping Natalie in the very beginning. He did really nothing. He didn't do much of anything this episode, and that kind of pissed me off because I've really been liking Stan, and he's not really doing much in this episode. The whole thing with Theo, like I just don't really care about that. Let's talk about the whole Luke thing. Luke getting arrested for drug possession. Why does this matter? I don't know why this matters. I mean, yeah, I get that Grace wanted to stop doing drugs and everything, but what does this have to do with Molly's murder? I don't get what this has to do with anything, really. I mean, sure, yay, he's doing drugs. Okay, we don't need him to get arrested for doing drugs. It's just annoying that he continues to do drugs. It's annoying of all the stuff that's going on there. It looks like next week someone is going to come up to Grace, and people are going to start targeting her again. The fact that she had no targets on her back, only a few, is really weird the way that's going on. Most of what we've been focusing on this episode was very much to the side, though. We didn't really focus. We did focus on Molly's murder, but we also didn't. Most of it was focused on this whole love triangle thing and the fact that Bruno was a corrupted cop, and I just didn't really care, unfortunately. And I'm sorry, but I just didn't. And honestly, thinking about it, I don't really care about most of these characters. The only characters I really care about, and the only characters I have cared about, are Grace and Natalie. Those are the two characters I really do care about. I like their central relationship. Stan, there's definitely something going on with him. But Bruno, Gwendolyn, I don't care. I don't care about what's going on with them. I don't find them to be interesting characters. I found them to be way too plain. And I just don't really care about what's going on with them. I'm sorry, guys, but if the show continues to go in this direction, I might stop watching. I don't know. The show's kind of losing me after this episode, and I'm kind of hesitant about if I want to continue watching the show. Next week's episode looks good. I'm going to say that right now. Next week's episode definitely looks good. It looks like Grace is going to encounter someone who's going to put her in this really tough, really hostile situation, and we don't know what's going to happen there. But I just want the show to focus on the case. I think it's really, when it focuses on the case and when it, focuses on what it needs to, then it's really good. But when it goes into other territory and doesn't have anything to do with the case, then it becomes a full-on soap opera, and the show gets really soapy. And when it's soapy, it's not like Empire soapy, which is kind of fun at times. Empire can be really bad too, but, a lot of times can be a lot of fun, and I also really do like Empire. The thing is here, this show just doesn't have the compelling characters that Empire does, and I just don't find the show to be nearly as interesting as it should be. But overall, guys, I know you guys saw this episode, not really loving where the show is headed. I am going to watch next week's episode, but if I don't like next week's episode, that most likely is it for me. I'm probably going to do what I do with Feed the Beast. I don't like an episode. I'm going to go on, see if I like, another episode. I didn't hate this episode. Just a lot of stuff we focused on here I just didn't really care about, unfortunately. I'm sorry if you guys like this show. I don't think there are many people that do. I don't hear many people talk about the show, honestly. There aren't many people I'm hearing. I don't think this show has a huge following or anything like that. So let me know if you guys saw this episode. Loved your thoughts on it. But I will see you guys next week, which will be for Unreal, which I am definitely looking forward to. I'm sure it'll be much better than this episode, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.